Hey Calgary, I'm Kevin Chorney. It's February 20th, and this is Calgary Now. Years of junior high and high school aren't easy for many youths. You have to worry about grades and choosing a career path, establishing and maintaining friendships in an increasingly and rapidly changing social environment, and do so while you're only just beginning to discover who you really are. While progress has been made in the last 2 decades, these challenges for youth who are questioning their sexual and gender identity are all the more difficult as our society is still trying to figure out just how to accept them. There are resources and support groups available in many communities that are working hard to support youth and create the change that is needed. And while technology and social media has made it easier for voices to be heard, it continues to be an uphill battle fighting discrimination at a personal and institutional level. LGBTQ. It's an adult acronym synonymous with acceptance, understanding, and community. It stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and the Q, well, the Q is for questioning, as in questioning your sexuality or who you are. Imagine the doubt, confusion, and shame you might feel if your gender identity or sexual preference were not in line with what society had programmed you for. Now, imagine you're in the 10th grade, with acne on your face and the weight of the world on your shoulders, and you're torn as to your gender, your sexual preference, and what this means for your future. My guests and I are all set to discuss this in just a moment. We're on Twitter if you want to get at us at Calgary Now Show and give us your 2 cents. First things first, though, let's check out the rant pack. Stay with us.
I think this issue is something society is going to have a tough time dealing with. It's so new. These gay rights issues are just brand new to Canada, especially. Like, gay marriage is a recent thing. So now, when a child comes and defines themselves as gay, lesbian, or wants to change gender, I feel that we need to equip the parents in knowing how to deal with children like this. I don't think this is something that had to be dealt with in this manner before in history.
Hey Calgary, thanks for joining us tonight. We're happy to welcome Jenna Martins-Forrester from the University of Calgary and Nick Moore from Camp Firefly. Guys, thanks so much for being here. Real quick, Nick, tell us about yourself.
I work for the Calgary Sexual Health Center and the University of Alberta for Camp Firefly, and there I coordinate the Calgary Camp Firefly, which is a leadership camp for LGBTQ kids and as well as their allies. And I also do a program in schools where I teach anti-homophobia education and LGBT awareness in middle schools, high schools, wherever they'll have us.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah.
It sounds like a great fit for the show. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Jenna, how about yourself?
I'm a student at the University of Calgary. I am the VP of Student Engagement in a new club called CASE, Consent Awareness and Sexual Education.
Cool.
And I work as a peer support volunteer at the Women's Resource Center, which is kind of the University Gender Equity Center.
Again, very involved. That's awesome. Thanks very much for being here. Nick, I want to start with you, hear a little bit more about Camp Firefly. Now, what is the mission statement for Camp Firefly?
I don't know if I could quote the mission statement or not.
Fair enough.
The idea for the camp is to provide a safe and supportive environment for the youth to come and to help them develop their resiliency and leadership. So these youth face a lot of struggles and adversity in their realities, and so they can come to camp for 4 days, once a year, and kind of have that shift and find that safe space to kind of develop and grow in that sense. And it kind of takes it away from it gets better later, and kind of this is a time where we can make it better for you now and connect them with resources, community, other people like themselves, so they can make friends and they just come and have a great time. Because
that kind of has been the mantra for a long time. It gets better later, so tough it out until then. Why are we finally seeing a shift towards more support at that age?
I think it's just kind of we're getting past that ridiculousness where we should just tell them to put up and suffer. Just wait, it'll get better. It's kind of a ridiculous thought when
it's kind of inhumane, isn't it? Wouldn't you agree?
Well,
yeah, like telling somebody that they have to wait until they're out of their current situation before they can expect to be treated like a person by their peers is kind of an unreasonable demand to place on anybody, especially somebody that's young. And
kids are realizing that as well.
Oh yeah.
So they're buying in then?
Oh yeah, totally. In the programs we do in schools where we talk about homophobia and LGBT awareness, there's not a lot of fear. Like, they're quite happy and open to talk about these topics, and they view LGBT rights as human rights. And it's the coolest thing is seeing grades 7 and 8 classes fearlessly tackle these conversations about discrimination and oppression. And when they hit high school, it's going to be even a bigger conversation, a tipping point.
In that regard, it's kind of exciting to hear that.
Yeah, And I think it's important to target these kids before they get to the high school point, because that's when you really start establishing yourself separate from your parents, and that's when you start isolating yourself in peer groups. And it's before you start forming like niche, like cliques. Yeah. So if you get to them before they've basically gotten in with like a certain group of people and they're worried about impressing them, and they start to establish their identity, then you're more likely to affect them than their peers are.
That's a sound strategy. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Now, guys, I'm not entirely familiar with sex education curriculum to date. Now, my understanding, I can only relate to when I went to school. Now, when I went to school, and I've been out of school a little while now, there was really no talk of transgender or homosexuality whatsoever in our sex ed classes. Is it a conversation? Is it a portion of study that needs to be included in today's sexual education? Oh,
absolutely. I went to a pretty progressive high school. I went to Western Canada. Yeah. Pretty diverse school. We actually had somebody from, I think it was Calgary Sexual Health.
That's quite possible.
Come in, like a member of the LGBT community, was a bisexual woman, come in and discuss it, but even that, it was like a very limited discussion.
It's like a one-day thing.
It was like a one-day thing, and she basically just talked about her experience. She didn't like go into like the social implications or anything, and it wasn't part of our regular sex ed curriculum. It was like a separate thing.
Right. Right.
And
is that enough? Yeah.
Well, how comfortable was your teacher delivering it when you were in high school? Is the other thing. So I just want to kind of plug Calgary Sexual Health right now.
Yeah, sure.
We have a team of educators that goes into pretty much all the public schools, middle schools and high schools, universities, and do comprehensive sex ed over about 4 or 5 days. And it's integrated conversations on relationships, consent, healthy sexuality, STIs, and then the social conversations around sexism and homophobia. And it's so great. It's a fun job too.
Oh, I imagine. So this is only 4 or 5 days, though, you say?
Yeah, well, there's a whole lot of other curriculum in the courses that they have, and there's usually only a certain dedicated amount of time, but we develop programs at Calgary Sexual Health, grade specific, in line with what the province looks at in terms of learning outcomes, and we deliver it, and so the teachers don't have to worry about it. They don't have to worry about the inclusive language and hitting all the marks. It's done there for them, and they can do subsequent stuff before or after as well too.
So you're doing a lot of work in Calgary then?
Oh yeah, we have about 5 or 6 educators, full-time educators, going to most of the middle schools and high schools in Calgary.
Well, this is good. I mean,
this is other programs too. So
not quite, embedded in the curriculum, but definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Would that be the end game, to have it established in that curriculum?
I think it would be that would be the ideal, and also to have teachers that were specifically trained in dealing with these kind of issues. You can't expect somebody to know everything about the LGBT community or how to address it for kids if they don't get exposure to it as part of their training as a teacher. And
Definitely. That's actually leads me to my next question nicely. Now, it's still a fact, and it is unfortunate. It's downright sad, frankly, that LGBTQ youth are still comparatively higher amongst the general population when it comes to suicide attempts.
14 times higher in Canada.
Is that right? 14 times. Now, that's a number to me that's unacceptable. That's frankly unacceptable. Is that what it comes down to? Does it come down to our coaches, teachers, guidance counselors having that ability to identify these kids that are struggling? I mean, it's a tough thing to spot. It's not like it's a scar. It's not a red light type thing.
Yeah, it's a big part of it. And LGBTQ kids, if they're facing bullying, are more likely to be socially isolated. So they're more likely to be harder to spot. So you can't just cursorily look over your students and expect to see them. You actually have to look harder. You have to be looking for danger signs. So
that's probably half the struggle, though. I mean, what are these danger signs? Some kids are just introverts and kind of loners as is.
I think it's also about integrating safe spaces in our schools. I think that's a big conversation that people sometimes overlook, is that these youth feel alone and isolated, and that's when they give up hope. Yeah. But if we can create spaces, structured, formalized spaces in our schools that create safe spaces, they'll feel more comfortable, won't feel isolated and alone. And there's a movement sweeping across pretty much North America around gay-straight alliances. And so gay-straight alliances, or GSAs, are school-supported clubs where LGBTQ kids as well as straight allies can come and talk about social justice, feel safe and comfortable while they eat their lunch. They can get involved in advocacy if they want, or finding community supports. But there's a huge shift happening, and that's where the teachers are getting in the conversation, the administration, administration and the greater community. And just to want to share, Calgary Sexual Health has a GSA network that meets once a month, and we started about 2 years ago, and we had about 4 schools that had identifiable GSAs, and now there's like over 50 that come to these meetings. And